pleasant morning to you out there. Welcome to the program, The Dailies on Echo Television International, where we'll be looking at various stories on the paper, the meeting that TUC had with the federal government, where they have given the federal government 2 weeks ultimatum to meet up with some of the demands, especially in regard to the palliative to Nigerians. And also we've seen that Obi and Atiku have submitted their appeal at the Supreme Court. So our fingers are crossed as we follow up that story closely and see what will happen after the Supreme. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing this together with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Fine. Thank you. Hope you rested well.
I did.
All right. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. Please do well to follow us there. Drop your comment, drop your contribution on any of the story that is of interest to you. And then later on, we will open the line so you can also air your view by calling us live on the show. And we will run straight into the paper. Rachel will be taking us through the first paper.
On Nigerian Tribune at UNGA, Tinubu says governance failure, foreign exploitation, and others overburden Africa. We have the writer under the story saying demands Marshall Plan type intervention, explains subsidy removal. You can find more details on page 8. Most Nigerian politicians are destiny destroyers, not helpers. A statement coming from Bishop Fape as 8th remembrance and patronal anniversary of HID Awolowo holds in Sagamu. You can find more details on page 5. The big story on the paper, Atiku Obi file 86 grounds of appeal at Supreme Court. One apex court to nullify Tinubu's victory at PEPC. You can find more details on page 16. Diesel ex-depot price hits 1,000 naira per litre as oil marketers lament incessant increase. National grid collapses again 5 days after restoration. NNPCL retires top management staff in major shakeup. You can find more details on page 6. Obasanjo's attack, our silence, not act of cowardice, coming from Oyo Obas. You can find more details on page 8. Gunmen kill soldiers, policemen, others in Imo State. Dangote refinery to begin diesel jet fuel production in October. This is a report that you can find more details on page 7. We have a picture story showing protests rock 4 cities over Mohbad's death. Sanwo-Olu invites DSS to join probe. More details can be found on page 20, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On Nigerian News Direct, Ogun to enact law prescribing death penalty on cultists. This is coming from Governor Abiodun. You can find detail of that on page 5. Again, National Grid collapses as minister target transmission of 80% generated power to consumers by 2026. You can follow up more on page 6. The big story still, Atiku Obi insists on nullification of Tinubu's victory. Head to the apex court with the right of Linda story saying tribunal made grave error coming from Atiku as Obi presents 50 grounds of appeal against tribunal judgment. More detail can be found on page 2. Missing intestine, Lagos Assembly calls for arrest of doctor. It seems to be a lot of organ harvesting. You can take a look at that story on page 4. And we have need competition, Egypt Air over death of Nigerian on-board aircraft. More of that can be found on page 4. Shake-up in NNPCL leadership as management staff are involuntarily retired. Also still on the paper, we have NCC unveil new numbering format for fixed lines. Lagos generate 400 billion naira IGR in the first half of 2023. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On New Telegraph, 5.2 trillion naira debt. Federal government recovers 57 billion naira from 10 MDAs. And about the revenue of the country, Nigeria records windfall as oil sells above $100 per barrel. You can find more details on page 25. For Abacha, I will never support coup in Africa. A statement coming from Obasanjo. Wire increased House committees from 109 to 137 by Abbas. Court dismisses Bulkachua's suit seeking to stop ICPC's probe. Sanwo-Olu invites DSS to join in Mohbad's death probe. The big story on New Telegraph, PEPT judgment, Atiku Obi approaches the Supreme Court, file 85 grounds of appeal against Tinubu. The writer saying PDP Labour Party presidential candidate filed 35, 50 grounds respectively. Criminals have taken over leadership in Nigeria, says Anambra ex-governor as party kicks off Guba campaign in Bayelsa. Airlines trap funds hit $783 million in August. Boeing forecasts 1,025 airlines for Africa in 20 years. Or your APC to Ganduje tell Tinubu we've not been compensated. You can find more details on page 5 and 7. Residents is on 22-year-old for returning 15 million naira to owner. 1 in 10 Japanese now aged 80 and above. You can find more details on page 28. Gunmen kill 8 soldiers, police, others in Imo. We have LP expresses concern over November Guba poll. Officers wounded in battle observe national award. You can find more details of these stories on page 4, 5, and 7. Still on New Telegraph, second Greek collapse in 5 days throws Nigeria into darkness. Power output falls from 3,594.60 megawatts park at midnight to 42.7 megawatts. At noon yesterday, we have Delta Power Plant had 41.00 megawatt of operational power, and we are seeing AFAM is having 1.7 megawatts. You can find more details on page 2. And at the downside, we have a study that says heavy drinking tied to dangerous heart and liver fat risks. You can find more details of that story on page 7, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Richard, there was a writer that followed this story where we have for Abacha, I will never support Queen Africa. That's coming from Obasanjo.
Yeah.
And then the writer following there said that being on 14 hours road trip opportunity to feel Nigerians' pain, coming from Umahi. Now, of course, he's a minister of work, so he's trying to go around to see works that will be done. But I mean, taking a 14 hours road trip to feel the pain of Nigerians, I hope that after feeling the pains of Nigeria, we'll begin to see him doing something to fix these roads. I'm very sure that after 14 hours on the road, he has met quite a number of potholes. He has met quite a number of roads that need thorough work. I'm very sure that after that 14 hours, quite a lot of things have opened his eyes to the fact that there is work to be done. And I'm happy where there was a time when he said that contractors will be given a time limit where when you are given a work, expected to deliver. So when I saw this story, initially it kind of looked funny going on 14 hours, but then I believe that after these 14 hours, it will give you an eye-opener to see what needs to be fixed. Now we are seeing even the power grid, second time again, after 5 days. I don't know what is happening, why we keep having our national, power plant going down, slumming down for maybe 41.00 megawatts, and then it's supposed to even be more than that. Well, our fingers are crossed. We hope that all of these ministers that are heading these various sectors know that there's quite a number of work to be done. So they need to get the ball rolling by doing what is expected of them to do. After 14 hours, let us see our routes being fixed. And then after this power, the national, second Greek collapse that we had in 5 days, we're hoping to see another proactive measure coming from the Minister of Power. We don't want to hear excuses such as there's no water, it's rainy season now, preserve the water. We don't want to hear there's no, because the last time the excuse they gave was there was a fire outbreak. That was what caused the national grid we had last week. So we hope, we don't know what is the reason for this, but we hope to see more measures coming from our ministers, because I do not think Nigerians are ready to take excuses whatsoever. We need work, not excuses for why things don't happen as they should.
Of course, the Nigerians need results. Nobody cares about your 14 hours road trip just to feel our pain. If you're in the position not to feel the pain, fine. You're just in the position to listen and to act, because the reports are out there. There are pictures, there are evidence to show you that this route and that routes are bad. There are people in that offices in those areas that those roads are located at and have given you. You don't have to put your position in feeling the pain. You just have to be a listener. And when you listen to the cry of Nigerians and when you see the problem, you solve it. Well, it's a good thing. Keep taking those road trips to feel the pains of Nigerians. If that will maybe if that will motivate you to walk faster, good. But in the end, Sele, it all boils down to the result, not your road trip. We just want to see the results. We want to see roads getting fixed. We want to see that truly when you give these contractors contracts and you give them a time frame, you pay them and you follow it, and above all also the quality of work, because it's one thing for us to have roads and barely a year later there are maintenance, there are potholes on that road that will lead to further accidents and all of that. So let them just do the work. And we've seen also where the African Development Bank are coming in to give in grants concerning the power projects to light up rural areas. So we're looking forward to the Minister of Electricity, not only of power rather, not only depending on African Development Bank, but also finding other means that other people can step in to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and that when it comes to power in the country, we will see advances and then stronger electricity being generated. Not the megawatts we are seeing right now is not good enough, and then something needs to be done about it.
And then for this power plant that keep collapsing,
yes,
we hope that they do something about
exactly.
it so that we have constant electricity. Well, let's take a look at the leadership newspaper, where we have no regret over my utterances to Oyo monarchs. This is coming from Obasanjo. For those who had a closer look, what happened during the weekend, where he asked talking about asking some of the monarchs over there in Oyo to stand up, and then, quite back and forth, where we are having the monarchs not happy, and then him also denying the woman that has 2 kids for him that she's not part of his family, so he's not apologizing for what he did. So you can follow up that story on page 16 of the leadership newspaper. And on governorship, tribunal affirms Lawan election in Zamfara, decide on Kano tomorrow. More can be found on page 10. And what's trending, we have FCT task force arrest 400 persons and pound 50 vehicles for various offenses. 12.5 kg cooking gas may hit 18,000 naira. We saw that from Monday, so we don't know what will happen, but we hope that that will not be the outcome eventually. And on the issue of strike, federal government and labor talks end in deadlock to meet again. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. And still ahead, we have quite a number of few stories that are on the front page of the paper, so you can grab the leadership and continue reading any story that is of interest to you.
On the Nigerian Standard, NNPC announces compulsory retirement for senior staff. Security forces killed 10 kidnappers and rescued some victims. You can find more details on page 17. I haven't appointed you to enrich yourselves. Governor Alia assures of more federal attention. You can find more details of his statement on page 21. The big story on the paper, Tinubu advances stronger economic ties with South Africa, where we can still see a picture of him with the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will deal mercilessly with conspirators. You can find the details on the front page and continue on page 2. I believe a statement coming from the governor of Plateau State, Mutfang, and that's all the news on the Nigeria Standard.
All right, let's take a look at the first newspaper, where we have national, I take that story again, nationwide blackout as power grid collapses again. You can find more detail of that story inside. And also we have major shakeup as NNPCL sack top management staff. Tinubu vows to end bottlenecks to oil industry funding. More of that story can be found inside the paper. NERC ordered discourse to reimburse customers for meter purchase under the map. You can find that inside. Still on the issue of 2023 poll, Atiku Obi challenged Tinubu's victory at the Supreme Court, where the writer seeks its nullification as Labour Party flag bearer files 50 grounds of appeal. AP flag bearer urges Atiku Obi to give Tinubu the chance to work, says Nigeria's unity is important. And also still on the paper, we can no longer sustain nationwide petrol distribution. Marketers are raising the alarm. We hope to see some measures coming in on how oil can be distributed, because initially they gave the reason as a result of vandalism, vandalizing some of the pipelines, and this is what is making it very difficult for them to make distribution. So you can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of that story. Nigeria needs 20,000 schools, 907 769 classrooms to absorb out-of-school children. This is a report. You can find more. And we have AMCON gives condition for Eric owner to recover airline. Gunmen ambush kill 8 soldiers and policemen in Imo State. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Punch, Tinubu's victory, Atiku Obi filed 86 ground appeals at Supreme Court. And on Niger crisis will put pressure on Nigerian food market. This is a statement coming from the World Bank. And on dollar shortage, foreign airlines trap funds hit $783 million. The big story on the Punch, Dangote refinery imports crude as NNPCL swaps oil for loans. Dangote expects crude from NNPCL November, begins operation October. We have $3 billion crude for loan deals. Others put pressure on local supply. More details of this story can be found on page 18. We have a picture story showing youths protest Mohbad's death and demand justice. At the downside of the paper, government plans renovation of as miscreant vandalized Lagos pedestrian bridges. Power-drunk Lagos policemen invade Lekki shop, arrest attendant and plot charges. At UNGA, Tinubu Biden condemned coup, insists on democracy. You can find more details on page 39, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
On Daily Independent newspaper, we have strike threat, hardship faced by night workers giving us sleepless night. This is coming from the TUC. Extend ultimatum to federal government by 2 weeks. You can start reading what they discuss on the front page and continue inside the paper. And still on the national grid collapses again. You can find that story inside the paper. The big story for Daily Independent says Atiku asks Supreme Court to declare him the president. Insists 35 grounds for nullification of the PEPC judgment. Obi urges Apex Court to notify Tinubu's victory. You can find detail of that story on page 29. CSO asks Akpabio to resign over alleged sham impeachment plot, says action targeted at pitting senators against Tinubu. Diphtheria outbreak worsened in Kano, Borno, and Bauchi. This is coming from doctors. We hope something will be done to curtail that before they spread to other northern states there. Tinubu exposed how Western economies undermine Africa's development, says Nigeria now ready for business. You can find that on page 6. National Assembly won't review social media regulation bill. This is coming from Akpabio. You can find that too on page 6. High turnover of National Assembly members, cause of capacity challenge, coming from Abbas, the Speaker of Reps. Resident flee as gunmen kill security operative in Imo community. LP condemns killing of soldiers and policemen, CSCDC operatives. Killers will be fished out to face the law, says Ozodema. You can find more inside the paper. Court dismisses Bukuchukwu's suit seeking to stop the ICPC for investigating him. You can find that on page 6. And we have the picture story where we can see Governor Hope Ozodema with the head of security agency in Imo State yesterday at the scene of the incident where unknown gunmen killed some security operatives on duty. And that is all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, TUC NLC differ on modalities for planned strike. Obaseki Shaibu exchange bricks bad over lockout. You can find more details on page 5. Our silence not cowardice, Oyo monarchs tell Obasanjo. 71 exit NNPCL in gale of retirement at oil giant. You can find more details on page 5. Atiku Obi filed 86 grounds at Supreme Court. Appellant presidential election called in law. You can find more details on the front page and continue on page 5. There are a few highlights. PEPC ignored weight of evidence on result transmission. Wrong to hold that. IRS not collision system of proof should not be on plaintiff. These are more of the reasons. These are more of the grounds. You can find more details of these 86 grounds on page 5. National grid collapses for second time in 1 week. The big story on the paper, Tinubu at UNGA Nigeria welcomes true partnership. President addresses world leaders. And then we have statements coming from the president. We welcome partnership with those who do not mind seeing Nigeria and Africa assume larger roles in the global community. The question is not whether Nigeria is open for business. The question is how much of the world is truly open to doing business with Nigeria and Africa in an equal, mutually beneficial manner. And we have other highlights of the meeting. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. And at the downside of the paper, government targets 20,000 megawatts in 3 years. Airlines trap funds now $738 million. More details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Well, let's take a look at the Voice of Liberty. Looking at appointments, we have Northern Elders MBMOA congratulates Dr. Baba Ahmed. We record that he was being given an appointment to work with the Vice President. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. Atiku storms Supreme Court, seek reversal of tribunal's judgment. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Dangote refinery to commence operation in October with 370,000 barrels per day coming from the director. Petrol scarcity imminent as diesel price hit 1,100 naira per litre. We can't restock assets load. Oil marketers are groaning. Unless the federal government step in to arrest the slide, and oil marketers say they can no longer sustain the distribution of petrol and other products nationwide, as the price of diesel used to power their trucks now sell for 1,001 per litre in many jurisdictions. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper, and that means if diesel is selling at this price, I can only wonder how schools will survive, because we know that most schools, the kind of gen they use, definitely use the diesel. So if marketers cannot even transport the, talking about distributed petrol because of the price of diesel, so imagine other people buying from the marketers. How much would it be? So if they buy it at 1,001, how much are they going to sell it? This is really going to take a toll, not just it, but a lot of businesses will eventually suffer if this thing is not being addressed. So we hope that the government will swiftly get into action. What can we do to curtail this price? Because we remember that even petrol, there is a trend that we might be buying it over 800 naira per litre. So that is to say that transportation will be higher. Buying of food and even services is going to be very high. So everything, inflation price for August is already leaving a lot of people with their jaws down. So just imagine what it will look like again for September, inflation. So we keep saying that there are quite a number of things we have to do. If the president is already assuring other nations at the United Nations General Assembly that Nigeria is open for business, then we need to make sure that the environment is favorable enough for businesses to thrive. Because if the environment is not, favorable for businesses to thrive, nobody wants to get involved to do business with us here in the country. So we need to address quite a number of things that need quick and swift action. We need to give it attention as it is right now. So quite a lot when you look at this.
Even over 4 weeks ago, we saw marketers complaining about diesel price and how it's affecting production, and of course the cost of it, and then eventually how much these products will be sold in the market. And we see them already threatening to leave Nigeria, which that would be something we wouldn't even want to imagine what it would be like for us in this country. And at that time the diesel price was barely 900 thereabout, and they were already lamenting, and then now we are looking at it going high. So this hardship concerning diesel and what marketers are using, what institutions that run on generators that consume diesel are going through, is just going to keep increasing. It's not going to get better, it's going to keep increasing. And then the question is, what is the way forward as it is now? We're looking at no consistent electricity, and even when it is available, the megawatts are not even strong to power some of the things that are needed for it too. So entirely industries cannot depend on it, manufacturers cannot depend on it, organizations that use so much electricity cannot depend on it, small, medium-scale businesses cannot even depend on electricity. We will just keep emphasizing that there is so much work, and then there is a need for that. And one of the things that caught me concerning the statement from the president at the UNGA concerning investors coming in, that are they willing to partnership with us at our level without exploitation, and at the manner in which they would want us to grow and compete at the global level. Because whether we like it or not, there's still exploitation from foreign investors in Africa, in Nigeria at large. And truly, we are looking forward to these investors coming to be a part of the country and also give us a playing ground that we can also eventually grow to compete in the global market. So I'm also looking, and I am very happy that the president stated out clearly, it's not all about having investors, but investors that are willing to come and partnership with us at the level at which we are without exploitation, and also to allow us grow to the level of global competition. It's very important, as it is for Nigeria and Africa in general.
Honestly, you just got this words right out of my mouth, Richard. There's quite a lot of work to be done, and just like you said, the president already said he's those who are willing to work with Africa and Nigeria, and then he also said the fact that people who are exploiting African countries, because we've seen quite a number of foreign investors coming in disguise of being investors, and they're coming to loot some of the we have talking about natural resources, and they're leaving the country. So the issue of diesel, honestly, it's heavy for me as it is, because there was a time when we had a lot of media stations and other manufacturers shutting down because they were unable to power all of this thing because of how much they buy diesel. Let's not even to go to the hospitals that need it for operation. There was a time that patients were asked to go buy it. I know somebody that an operation was being conducted with a torchlight. Why? Because there was no light for them to power the generator there. So you can see how bad things are going. Because when it affects one sector, you think it's just one sector. Every other sector gets affected eventually. Education is going to be affected. Health is going to be affected. Business are going to be affected. So it's not just about saying that it's just the sector. Every other sector is affected. So we hope to see steps coming in from the relevant authorities and agencies to look into what can be done so we can have things moving smoothly. Still on the Voice of Liberty, Turkish firm banks contract to secure Nigerian borders. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. We have highest crime rate ranking, Nigeria, 5th most violent country globally. This is a report. Well, we hope we'll look into what can be done to make Nigeria not a violent country, because we are looking at the globally. Nigeria has ranked the 15th most violent country. You can read more of that report inside the paper. Still coming from Imo State, gunmen ambush set ablaze 8 soldiers and policemen. This is really a sad one. We keep having our security agents at the front line, and then they keep losing their life. And we ask, what is the problem? Just like we said yesterday, for some of these things we see, kidnapping on the road or our security agency being put, their life being at stake, is because we have snitches somewhere. If not, you can't just see, I mean, we're talking about security operatives, they are armed. So how comes they were being set up? Were they sleeping? What happened? You begin to ask certain questions that you can't even get answers to it eventually. So we hope more measures when it comes to, let us have some surveillance camera, something that can go into, let us be sure what is really happening. Who are these people? Who are they working with? And I think to go a long way to make that those who are hoping to join the security agencies soon, we know that their lives is secure, that even if they die, you know, defending their country, to be for a just cause, not for somebody's carelessness somewhere, and then we end up losing them. We really send our condolences to this, to the family of these security operatives that were being killed. And the last story on the Voice of Liberty, we have democracy without food on table, bleeding ground that will consume all of us. This is coming from Tinubu, saying democracy without food on table, breeding ground that will consume all of us, coming from Tinubu. And I'm happy he's saying this, Rachel, because he condemned the coup that we're having in some of these countries, Niger, Mali, and the rest of them that are under coup. And he's saying that we're without food on the table. So that is to say that our leaders have failed to provide the food on the table. And that is why we're having people looking for a way out of it, and thinking that when we have the military taking over, maybe it will bring something better. But we hope that we look into it. If we do not want democracy, or we do not want things to consume, or then we need to really practice democracy as it really should be practiced. So I'm happy it's coming from our president, and I hope that other leaders will see the same way, and the need of all of this TUC, NLC will be met everybody needs to be attended to eventually. So we hope to see more of that. And that is all on the Voice of Liberty. But before we continue, Rachel, let's take a break so we can let our viewers to add their view on any of the story that is of interest to you. Please stay tuned with us. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, the program still is the Dailies on Echo Television. We've been looking at quite a number of stories ranging from the meeting the TUC had with the federal government and giving them 2 weeks ultimatum, differing from what the NLC actually gave the federal government, and also looking at what the President Tinubu said or his address to world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly. So quite a number of stories on the paper this morning. Our number is displayed on your screen. Please do well to air your view and let us know what you feel about any of the story that is of interest to you. Please do remember to be very civil with your language and try to summarize your point at most in a minute so other callers can also get the room to air their views. I still have Rachel Tanzi with me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Senator.
All right, let's take the next paper.
On Blueprint newspaper, on PEPT, Atiku PDP head for Supreme Court seek to nullify Tinubu's victory. On Hajj 2024, Saudi Arabia allocates 95,000 seats to Nigeria. Bago purchases 7 billion naira luxury buses for Niger citizens. You can find more details. This is on palliative, and we can see that Niger State have been trying their best concerning palliatives. But we have a caller.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, Sele and Rachel.
Good morning.
Hello. Yeah, Sele and Rachel, good morning, my sisters.
Good morning, we can hear you, sir.
From Kaduna. Honestly, we are in a democratic era. But as if we don't have democracy in Nigeria. What is happening in Nigeria is as if our leaders doesn't have the subject at heart. Is this how we continue suffering in this country? Is this how we continue suffering in a country of abundance? We have all it takes for the citizens to enjoy a country. But what is playing out in this country, my sister, I don't seem to understand. Each day we make calls. Each day we listen to paper review. As if we hear the next day, we hear different narrations to what is happening in the country. But things keep on deteriorating. The country keep on deteriorating. Leadership is a reproach in this country. I don't know where we got it wrong. Is practicing democracy a sin? If it is a sin, then Nigeria has committed sin. But if it is not a sin, why can't we get it right? During the military era, we know what we passed through in the hands of Buhari in the 1984 when we were in secondary school. You have to and queue and get soap to wash your uniform. If you don't have badge in your uniform, soap will not be sold to you. When Buhari was canvassing to become president, I told people, I said, Buhari doesn't have leadership quality. If Buhari comes to Nigeria, going to finish Nigeria, they say, no, Buhari is a man of integrity. Okay, Buhari came into power, and what we are passing through is the handwork of Buhari. Is this how we continue in this country? Tinubu came in. We are thinking he was going to make some reforms so that the country would take a different face. But we can see he's wearing the shoe of Buhari. He travels here and then, checking out of the country, go to this country, go to that country, even though he said he's canvassing for people that will come and establish in Nigeria. But will they come and establish in the country of Ranko? Because we don't have security in this country. You can imagine what happened in Southeast, that military guys, personnel were killed with policemen. Is this how we continue in this country? We are having internal problem. We are being so porous that other nations are coming in and are dealing with us, and no solution forthcoming in. My brothers and sisters, where are we going in this nation? I pray that we'll get it right with your prayer and my prayer, because prayer can soften a hardened substance. With your prayer and my prayer, we're going to get it right in this country. Enough of our suffering. Hardship is too much on people. People have emaciated. Nobody is himself because of the narration of this nation. I pray that your prayers and my prayers will make an impact so that leadership will take a new turn. Good morning, my sisters.
Good morning, Mr. Chuma from Kaduna. Thank you very much. Still on Blueprint newspaper, we have 4 palliatives Bago purchases 7 billion naira luxury buses for Niger citizens. Blueprint promises to strengthen relationship with Zinhor new agency. You can find more details on page 7. And the big story on the paper, opposition to rising military coup in Africa taken at UN Assembly. We stand with AU ECOWAS to back constitutional rule, statement coming from Biden. For those with narrow vision of Africa, we aren't afraid of confrontation, a statement coming from our President Tinubu. Says those still in power do not respect Allah's wishes. We have another caller.
Good morning.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Friday.
Contribution and what this country belongs to all of us. And anything you know that you can contribute for this country, you have to do it. And I'm equally begging people at least up appropriate level that they will be able to do something about it. My suggestion is that the investor that the president is trying to meet so that will come to Nigeria, all those things are very good. But you have to put your house in order. Because if you don't put your house in order, they're not how somebody who is not living there, who is not owner of that house, will come and live there. What is that? The president has to come so that those things that are moving in the country, all these things are happening in the country, like the skirt of I can see. Okay, 1,100. Now, the use of that I just to affect because people that selling this agricultural product and with supporting them and all that rest of other things, they're only using diesel, and the price of those things will go high. So the transportation of fuel, those who are trying to buy, something will be equally high. We should just know where to go. Then I'm asking the president to come and know what to do in the country in terms of this soil and this. And that's what I tell you that 3%. Not 3%. What that do? We don't want to do what the leaders, they don't have the policies. What is the policy?
Thank you very much for that call. Of course, it's what we've been saying. Before you win investors, put your home in place, put your house in place. Because when they are coming, we are seeing those that are already in the country threatening to leave because there's so much going on. They're coming in and they're seeing that the cost of production will be high. Of course, it's going to pursue whoever has the country's interest in mind. So yes, of course, we need to fix a lot of the economic challenges in the country, and I believe that when we do the needful, we won't even have to woo investors selling. They will run, come into the country, and we'll be at the position to tick and allow who we think will be of benefit to the country and not.
True.
Still on Blueprint newspaper, at the downside of the paper, we have the Defense Headquarters, NSCDC, NPF mom as gunmen kill 8 soldiers, cops and civil defenders. Burn 2 buses. Labour Party urges security beef off in the southeast. Yes, you can find more details on page 7 and also on page 6. 20-year-old Askira rides bicycle from Bauchi to see Wike in Abuja. Another person trying to break records. You can find more details on page 5. U.S. grants over 23.2 billion naira to support Nigerian students. Nigeria loses 1.18 billion naira, $1 billion to illicit financial flows annually. This is coming from the AGF. Fabemi, you can find more details of how much we are losing on page 7, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
Rich, I'm concerned about the U.S. grant that is being given, and I wonder how that money is going to be supplied. We talk about Nigerians in the country or out of the country. Of course, it's Nigerians in the country.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, how is this money going to get to them? I get concerned when I see grants coming in either from the World Bank or coming from other,
Countries.
Countries coming into the country. And then we wonder what is the problem. We just saw a paper where we saw the number of classes that are needed to be able to house out-of-school children.
Yeah,
and that's nothing compared with the number of out-of-school children. We're talking about almost 1.33 million students out of school. So you begin to know that quite a number of Nigerians are not, students are not in the classroom. And then we see grants like this. Of course, Nigerians will be happy. But the concern right now will be, how would this money get? Of course, it's supposed to go to maybe government schools, because those are those who need this grant at this point in time. And so I hope that we see it, because Nigerians will be happy, especially parents and students, that the grant is coming into the country. But when the grants come into the country, we saw about 25% that is needed to fund education, and then we're seeing some of the things that are on the list for 2024 budget. So we hope that this money will go a long way to be able to handle some of the out-of-school children we're having, to handle maybe some of the classes, infrastructure that are needed to make learning and to make everything conducive for students. So our fingers are crossed on how this money will eventually be used to make sure that education is being funded in the country as it is.
Costello, you know, the thing about this money is that as much as they come, because there's so much that needs to be done, it keeps being sunk into everything, and then it feels like nothing is happening. However, I want to believe, just as we saw what the Minister of Education is saying of more 25 funding, it means we need more of these fundings coming in and not only relying on budget allocation from the Federation. So I just hope that more will be done, and we don't have to sit down and wait for them to come. There are some of these fundings that we need to go after them, and then if we have the ministry willing to put in that kind of work with accountability, transparency, and of course diligence in work, we will definitely, within the 4 years period that the Minister of Education have given, we will be able to see better changes in the education system in the country.
Right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is This Day newspaper, starting with a big story on this day, where we are having at the Supreme Court, Atiku leads 35 OB, 51 grounds to nullify Tinubu's election, with some riders under, which I'll be taking a few, where we have says it's error in decision on electronic transmission, and 25% FCT votes, request rerun between Tinubu and him alone. That's talking about Atiku. Former Anambra governor wants the apex court to allow appeal, set aside tribunal judgment, grant relief, sought in petition either in main or alternative. You can read more of that story on the front page. Other story on the paper, we have Tinubu, 2 world leaders at the UN. Africa does not need pity, won't replace old shackles with new ones. The writer say insists broken promises, unfair treatment, extracting heavy toll on Africa. Vows to help re-establish democratic governance in Niger, and it says African nations will fight climate change on own terms. We hope that our own terms will actually help us. You can start on the front page and continue on page 33. Blackout as Nigeria power grid collapses the 3rd time in 5 days. Well, we're having other people saying the 2nd time, and this day saying the 3rd time, so you can do well to find more detail on page 5. Dangote 65,000 barrel per day refinery to begin operations in October, with the rider saying production to start with diesel and jet fuel. Petrol refining to commence on November 30th, says NNPC does not have the needed crude immediately. Company to buy feedstock in dollars. You can find more of the story inside the paper, and that is all in this day newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, Tinubu canvasses larger roles for Nigeria and Africa in the global community at the UNGA. Nigeria lost over 30,000 doctors to global migration, postgraduate college. You can find more details on page 9. Crack widens among organized labor. Why we refuse to join NLC strike, statement coming from TUC. You can't back out from a protest you didn't call Ajero 2 or C4. We only hear of warning strike in the media, a statement coming from TUC. We can do it alone, NLC is saying that. You can find more details on page 2. Dangote refinery to finally commence operation in October. Oil marketers cry out, say we can no longer sustain distribution of petrol nationwide. Still on the paper, boy with missing intestine dies. Atiku Obi challenges Nigeria's presidential election result. Tension in Kano, hours to governorship election verdict. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Alright, on the Guardian newspaper, where we are having at the UN General Assembly, Tinubu seek better deal to end extremism and Africans' exploitation. You can find on page 6. Angry Oyo APC members bailed Ganduji entourage with sachet water. You can find that on page 6. Family demand, alright, I take that story again. Family demands incident report repatriation of passenger that died aboard Egypt's Air. Still, we are having all eyes on judiciary, subtle harassment or political reawakening. This is a question. You can do well to find more answers on page 4. Atiku approaches Supreme Court to void the PEPC judgment on presidential poll. Also, we have the 12-year-old boy with the missing intestine dies at Lasu. We send our condolences, and we hope that this will send as a warning to others. I'm happy to hear that even that happened in Plateau State, as the issue of the kidney harvest. I mean, the police officers in charge of it said that they have arrested 2 other doctors that worked together with that doctor in Code Noah, who didn't really study medicine but then had the opportunity to do this operation, and he didn't work alone. So the police are still working, arresting the people that work together with him, and then some probe will go on to see what is this. And I hope that, just like we said, we begin to see, yesterday we said this, where we see inspection being done and things like that. Any clinic that doesn't stand the test should be destroyed, and then let us have the relevant authority and agency doing what is expected. If not, we wouldn't have had the issue of this boy, very young boy, with missing intestine. And you wonder what really is the problem. Is it for rituals? Is it for harvesting? What really is behind all of this? So we really send our condolences to the family of this boy, and we hope this will serve as an eye-opener to our agency to do their own homework, so we don't see repetition of such stories making it to the paper.
Of course, it only makes sense that a person who is not a doctor, an economist to be precise, will be able to run a hospital successfully and take on such vital operation that you would be able to take out an organ and the person will be able to sustain for a while. So yes, they should find those people working with them, and they have gone against their vows, they have gone against their ethics medically, and nobody should go scot-free concerning that. And then this is alongside many other things that are not going well in Nigeria. We talk about the flooding. Who are the people sleeping on their job that have been responsible for warning people that are on waterways, that are with the responsibility to making sure that, these don't become a disaster? Who are the people sleeping on their jobs? Who are the people sleeping their job when it comes to the health sector? who are the people in charge of going out to make sure that such hospitals don't even exist in the first place, that they are licensed and certified doctors, and that if they do not meet the requirement to have a certificate or the standard to run a clinic, who are the people in charge of all of these things that let it pass, and then we are now having innocent people being victim of a failed system. So I just hope that the government wakes up and do the needful in securing the lives and citizens, the life of citizens of its country.
All right. Well, I think that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Daily Times, OPS accuses NAS of stifling businesses, chasing away foreign investors, says it's in Supreme Court with legislative arm over summons and invitations, mum's the word from the National Assembly. Release funds to treat boy with missing intestine abroad, Lagos Assembly urges governor. No increase in fees for returning AAU students coming from the Vice Chancellor. Gunmen kill 8 security operatives in Imo. Court awards massive 500 billion naira damages against NNPC, NLNG, and others. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. Gridlock in Abeokuta as youths demand justice for Mohbad, and we have a picture story showing the protest. You can find more details on page 5, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel.
You're welcome,
I think
Sarah.
that's how far we can go on the program. Thank you to our callers who called in on the show this morning. Thank you to every crew member that gave their best for this program. And thank you also to our supporters for always supporting Echo Television. Until we come here again tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.